Hey guys, Josh Hatcher from Hatcher Media here to talk to you today about how to make your advertising more effective. This is part 2 of a 6-part series, so we're going to bring you one part of this each week, so keep coming back to hatchermedia.net. Check out our blog. You can also check all this stuff out on Facebook. So if you haven't seen the other posts, feel free to go on the YouTube channel and look back. You'll see all the information that you need. It should all be there. We'd love for you to stick with all 6 weeks of this, because if you apply these things, your advertising will be more effective. Advertising is expensive, and you don't want to just throw it away. You want to know that the time that you took, the money that you spent is going to give you a return on your investment, so you want to make it effective, and I want to be able to help you do that. We talked about good copywriting and how good copywriting is really important for that last week. Today, we're going to talk about good design. I can't teach you everything that I know about design. I have been doing graphic design for a long time. Really since I was a teenager, and that would have been, 20 years ago. So for 20 years I've been playing around with design, and towards the later end of it, I've gotten pretty good at it. And I don't say that to brag. I don't say that to be one of those haughty kind of guys. I just know I'm good at it. I've done a lot of it. That's what I do. Most of the work that I do is in graphic design. And so you want your advertisement to have good design if you want it to be effective. If it looks like it was done, you can tell bad design. In fact, a lot of people actually have an eye for design. They have enough of an eye to be able to recognize when something looks bad. And they can't explain why, they just know that it does. I'm going to try to teach you a couple things about design. I'm not going to be able to show you the graphical elements in this video because we're trying to keep this really simple. But I think if you read the blog post, you'll get a little better understanding, and I'll try to see if I can get some visual examples in the physical blog post for this. But in the video blog, I'm just going to explain it. The first one you need to do is you need to keep it readable. If you cannot read your advertisement, it doesn't do anybody any good. If you try to get too fancy, if you try to, sometimes people try so hard at the design that they make it so it can't be read. Make sure your font is big enough for the printing that needs to happen. The standard size of newspaper print is 10 to 12. I think 10 is usually closer to what newspaper print is. So if you go much smaller than 10, more than likely it won't be able to be read. So especially the most important things need to be a higher point font in order to be read, like the headlines and things like that. And your body text, 10 is a good rule of thumb, but you know what? Play around with it and see what happens. But you don't want to go too small. You want to make sure it's readable. And if you try to fit too much information on the page, it'll be unreadable. So that goes back to the good copy aspect. If you write your copy well, you won't need as many extra words. The next thing to think of is typography. Okay? And this is a pet peeve of mine because as a designer, I'm kind of OCD just a little bit. Just enough that when I see certain rules broken or certain fonts overused, it just makes me cringe. Let me give you a few fonts to avoid if you want to do design for advertising. One, avoid Arial. Not the mermaid, the font, okay? Everybody uses it. It's too basic. You want to do something a little different. And you can find free fonts anywhere. So you can replace Arial. Don't use Times New Roman for the same reason. It's overused. If you want to use that type of font, there are plenty of other ones that are readable, that are free, that you can use for your design, but don't use those two especially. And I'll tell you what, the two most common fonts that people say need to be eradicated from the planet are Papyrus and Comic Sans, okay? Don't use them in your ads. They will make you look cheap, and they will make you look like everybody else because everybody does it. So don't use Arial, Times Roman, Papyrus, or Comic Sans. I could probably list 15 fonts that you shouldn't use, but especially not those 4, okay? Find something different for your font face if you want it to look good. If you want to get some fresh fonts, I've got some links in my blog post, so you can check there and you can find some websites to find some cool fonts that you can use, which will definitely make what you're doing a lot better. If you're not sure how to install a font on your machine, I've got some more links there as well to help you figure that out. And okay, sorry about that. Let me give you a couple quick typography rules. So the fonts that you use, there's a couple rules that you kind of need to be aware of. And the first one is that a serif font, that's the kind of font that has, like at the bottom of your T, you've got a little extra line you know, at the bottom of your T. That's a serifed font. And then you have your sans serif font, which at the bottom of the T would just be a straight line. Straight line at the bottom. Not vertical. It'd be straight up and down. And you can see those when they're kind of blocked in. This is going to sound really silly, and it's really picky, and I don't know why it's a rule, but it's one of those things where if you lay out two designs that look identical in every way, except for they break this rule, people notice it, and it cheapens it. Okay? So, if you're going to make a headline, a sans serif font, that's a font without the little lines, then everything below it has to be sans serif. If it's a serifed font at the top with the little lines, you can use whatever fonts underneath it that you want, and that is fine. I don't know why that's a rule, but I will tell you what, when it's broken and you look at it, it looks cheap, and you don't know why. That's why. It's just a rule of design that most designers follow. There are exceptions to every rule when it comes to design, because design is art, and art is subjective. So you will see times when it might look okay because an artist has done a really good job with it. But for the most part, it cheapens it, and that's the reason why. It's a rule, so good design doesn't do it that way. Another thing you need to be thinking about is your photos, pictures, and graphics in your design. Number one, don't use clip art from MS Word or PowerPoint or anything like that. Nothing says done by my 8th grade nephew like using something from Microsoft Word. Just don't do it. The other thing, another little quick trick is if you're going to take an image from Google, please be careful. I have seen a lot of people just Google an image, grab it, and then in the end they get stuck with an $800 fine because you're not allowed to just steal other people's images. There are ways you can get free images for your design project that you don't have to pay for. You could even go out with a picture and snap your own if you're a decent photographer, get your own picture. And if you can't do that, like I said, there are places you can buy stock photography, and there are places you can grab free photography that you can use for those purposes. But you have to know what you're doing. Just don't grab it from Google, because that kind of fine is expensive. The other thing that is important here that I'll say about images, and this is the last thing that I'm going to talk about with good design, and that is if you're going to resize an image, okay? Let's say your image is a square image. I think that looks like a square. You want to resize that image. If you resize it this way, it's going to stretch it, and it's going to make it look fat. Okay? If you just resize it this way, it's going to make it look tall, and it looks cheap, and it looks horrible. There's a little secret that works on almost every computer. If you want to resize that image and make it bigger, what you want to do is you want to click on the corner of the image. You want to hold your Shift key down on your computer and just drag that from the corner while holding the Shift key. That'll make that whole image scale. So instead of just stretching it, it'll scale it. Okay? So when it scales it, it keeps its dimensions, and that makes it look better. This is a pet peeve of mine that makes me sick, physically ill, when I see it. So please make sure to make a point to try to use some of these tips for good design. If you just say, I have tried over and over again to make this look good, and I just can't do it. Guess what? I'm here to help. My rates are reasonable. I can do good work for you, and I can usually do it fairly quickly. But I do ask that you try to give me some lead time, so hopefully you're planning ahead, which honestly, planning ahead could be another whole blog post. You never just want to, on a whim, say, hey, let's put an ad together and put it in the paper, or let's send out a direct mail piece. No, you want to have a plan. Hopefully, before your year is out, you've started your plan for the following year. When you have your budgeting and all the things you should be doing for your business, I'm hoping that's what's happening anyway, you have a plan. At whatever point in the plan is appropriate to call your designer, do it. And like I said, I'd love to be able to help you out with this stuff. Not only do I do it myself, but I try to work with interns and with apprentices where I teach them and work very closely with them to teach them the stuff that I know about design so we can get good stuff out there. So, if you have something you need some help with it, please give me a call. I'd love to be able to help you. If you want to do it yourself, please keep my tips in mind, because for the sake of anybody out there that is an artist or that is a designer, you will keep our OCD under control. And the most important thing about it is it'll make your advertising more effective, which means more money in your wallet because it looks good and it looks appealing. All right, I'm Josh Hatcher. Get in touch with me, hatchermedia.net. You can send me an email to mail, M-A-I-L, at joshhatcher.com. Check me out on Facebook. Just look up Hatcher Media. And you can also see me on Twitter at Hatcher Media is my handle there. So I'm looking forward to talking to you more in our next series.